ABC-7 Extra.
Welcome to ABC-7 Extra. Good evening. I'm your host, Dylan McKim. For the next half hour, we are talking about the migrant situation in El Paso. El Paso has handled a lot. Starting around August, an influx of migrants came to the border, a majority of them from Venezuela, which created a different problem that local leaders have never encountered before. A majority of the Venezuelans were unsponsored, meaning they did not have any family in the United States to go to, and they did not have any money to buy things such as a plane or bus ticket. The city opened a welcome center to handle this issue and started chartering buses to destinations like New York City and Chicago. In total, El Paso sent almost 14,000 migrants to other locations on those charter buses. The county also opened its own center to help with migrants who are already sponsored. On October 12th, the federal government announced they would return Venezuelan migrants back to Mexico if they crossed the border illegally. A new system was put in place. Venezuelans will now have to apply for asylum before they come to the U.S., and they must have a sponsor. This new system eased the burden on El Paso, the city eventually closing the doors of the Welcome Center, but Venezuelans are gathering in Mexico. Venezuelan migrants in Juarez started camping right in front of CBP's temporary processing center this past week. The center is located by the Chihuahuita area along the Rio Grande. The migrants said they changed their camping sites because they want to be more visible to immigration officials. And as ABC-7's Heriberto Perez discovered, many of the migrants are worried about their situation and are still asking the U.S. for help and an opportunity.
Venezuelan migrants don't want to lose hope to cross the border. They have stayed days and nights camping along the Rio Grande. This morning, this area just across the border looking like this. Hundreds of Venezuelans now camping in a more visible site for U.S. eyes. This is where Venezuelan migrants are now camping in Ciudad Juarez, right along the Rio Grande and a few feet away and in front of one of CBP's processing centers. Migrants I saw were looking straight to the U.S. Daniel, a migrant I spoke to, told me he has had no time to think about what he will do if he doesn't cross.
No he tenido momento para pensar nada de eso, porque mi mente es llegar allá.
They all share the same goal of crossing. They will not give up. Daniel and other Venezuelan migrants also told me how they felt about Mexico.
Le damos las gracias a México que nos abrió las puertas y nos está acogiendo.
They are grateful to Mexico because it opened its doors for them. After I spoke with them, a long line of migrants gathered behind a pickup. It was from El Paso and Juarez residents who brought 600 burritos for them to eat. I spoke with them too.
La situación de ellos es difícil ahorita ya.
Enrique knows they are having a tough time. They wanted to help them in a way possible.
Quieren luchar por un propósito y que su familia esté bien.
He knows they are fighting for a purpose and caring about their families.
And the migrants told Heriberto that they have been traveling for more than a month and are now living in subpar conditions. We asked Border Patrol about these camps. In a statement, Border Patrol says, quote, in coordination with our partners with the government of Mexico, we continue to monitor the situation to ensure the safety of all migrants who enter our custody. The high number of encounters, averaging 1,990 migrant encounters throughout our sector since the beginning of fiscal year 2023, has required that we maintain an enhanced footprint with the TOPS, which is the temporary outdoor processing site. Joining me now is County Judge Ricardo Samaniego. And Judge Samaniego, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We want to talk about how things, in your eyes, how have things changed since this new system of sending Venezuelans back to Mexico who cross illegally, having them wait there, and then applying for asylum in Mexico?
Well, it gave us a breather. You know, the numbers have come down, but they're going back up again because if it's not, you know, one country, it's another one. And so then we started looking at these, you know, the changes. But really, we're right back to square one, where now the numbers climbing this week, and and then, like I've said before, we've really pushed the problem to Juarez. Right now, they're having really difficult time. Spoke to the mayor of Juarez, and you know their shelters are beginning to be busting at the seams, and we sort of shift. You know, we either have the problem or they have the problem, but it remains on the border. Been talking a lot. You know, Congresswoman Escobar convened two meetings now. Where we're trying to be proactive and utilize our resources, like how can we So a lot better, because I think there was a couple of times that we were sort of duplicating efforts. You know, we had a process center, the city had a process center. We're now looking at our process center. We're doing very well. Almost 200-300 a day go through our process center, and 7 days out of the week. And so that's been very successful. Looking at a shelter is also going to be very important. We talked to the diocese. The diocese is really, you know, trying to engage in seeing how they can help and open more churches. And but the real situation obviously is decompression. You know, how do we get as many people that don't come through our community, but maybe the flights that go out to different places like San Diego, Del Rio, we can't count on that. So we're really being proactive, meeting almost every week now, to be able to understand this new phenomenon that one country goes down, but now we've got Nicaraguans and other countries that are coming in, and our numbers going back up.
Yeah, so we mentioned the numbers, they went down so much that the city closed their welcome center. They're no longer chartering buses up to New York City or Chicago. But you're saying the numbers are going back up. You mentioned Nicaragua. Where are the numbers at right now? Can you give us the latest detail? Yeah,
for example, we were down all the way down to 700 apprehensions. Today, I think they were like at 1,400. Our numbers at the detention centers are climbing back up. But I think we've learned a lot, and busing people out is really not the answer, because what you're doing is you're creating a draw. Hey, I can get on a bus and I can go to New York, and then some of them don't even want to go to New York, but they figure at least the process is moving. And so I think, you know, we wouldn't do that again. You know, this idea that there's buses, because like I said, it draws attention that there's free buses, and then they can go somewhere else. They all came in and said they didn't have, you know, they didn't have sponsors, they didn't have money, because obviously if you have limited money and you get a free bus, you're going to take advantage of that. So we're not trying to draw anymore and trying to deal with the situation with us becoming part of the problem instead of part of the solution.
Now, you mentioned the county site, the county-run processing center, it's still open.
Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned the number. How many were you handling a day? And you're helping out those who have a sponsor, who know where they want to go and they have the money. You're just helping them maybe buy a bus ticket or get them a ride to the airport.
That's correct, and it's worked very well. I mean, we delay some so that we don't want. There's a lot of things that we have to look at: economic impact, tourism, make sure that we're not doing things that are negative, adverse to what we're trying to accomplish as a community. And so by keeping some of them there at the process center a little longer and not getting them into the airport, then you don't have that situation where people are hanging out or, you know, sitting on the floors or anything like that. So we're doing about 200, 250 a day. Our capacity could be as high as 600. So I've always said that the process centers is going to be something we're going to live with, because it's good for the community. We process them quickly. They go to other communities. They don't stay in El Paso. We don't see them under the bridge. And so we know that that's going to be, you know, our lane here in El Paso, is to get people to be at other communities. We also, one of the things that's helping a lot is there's, for example, every day a bus leaves from here to Houston. In Houston, the hubs are bigger, there's more transportation, and it's cheaper for them. So there's one instance where it was going to cost $800 to leave from here and $130 to leave from Houston. So helping them find cheaper prices obviously takes off the pressure from us trying to figure out on transportation, because some of them can afford $100, but they can't afford $800. So bringing down the cost is also helping us expedite, taking the cost off of us and the community. Everything at the process center is paid by FEMA, and it's also whether they go to the airport or anywhere else, it's not a cost. It's a cost is on the sponsor of that particular migrant or that migrant family.
Earlier in the show, our reporter, Eddie Perez, was in the migrant camp, the Venezuelan migrant camp that they set up on the south of the border, right across from the Border Patrol temporary outdoor processing site in Chihuahua. You know, they moved their camp over there. They want to make sure that the U.S. immigration officials can see them. Of course, they're waiting. They have to apply now in Mexico, and they have to have a sponsor to gain access into the country. Have you been talking with the Mexican government partners, and is Mexico able to handle the Venezuelans who are waiting in Juarez?
Their numbers dropped as well, because remember that if we're drawing them and we can't allow them to come through, then the problem lays there with Juarez. So their numbers have dropped as well because now people talk. We see them coming across, and they'll be calling their friends, "Hey, it's easy to go through here," or "This is what you can do," and then that'll convey the message as to whether we're drawing or whether you slow down. So according to Perez Cuellar, the mayor of Juarez, the numbers have gone down as well for them, but they still, they don't have the resources that the United States has. So when we decide to send people back to Juarez, it's a burden on them. Now, the government is talking, maybe providing an opportunity to provide money for shelters because they have to handle that situation. So like I said, it's either them or us, and I don't like that idea that it impacts a border because we're we're really close to each other. We're very, the synergisms are very close. And so whatever happens to Juarez impacts us. So we really need to take care of each other. And the best thing that we could do, obviously, and also we've got a little bit of excitement from the rest of the country that after 30 days, you're able to acquire a job. A lot of the communities in all over want them. I mean, there's some places where they're desperate to have a better workforce, expanded workforce, and they want them, but having to maintain them for a long time before they can work is a burden for them. So hearing about the possibilities of these 30 days and you're able to acquire ability to work in the USA is really going to be helpful. Because like I said, a lot of communities would be very interested in migrants if they're able to work at their community.
I want to go back to something you said earlier in the show that numbers this week, 1,400 encounters a day, and that was, you mentioned Nicaragua was a country that we were seeing an increase of migrants coming to the border, but there is a difference. Are those migrants, are they sponsored or are they similar to Venezuelans who are coming here unsponsored? Yeah,
these are sponsored, the majority of them, because like you said, when you're holding off those that aren't sponsored, but remember, there's also illegal passing through the border, and then some of these communities you can't send them back, and so then you're having to deal with that as well. So we're still in a transition of trying to figure out, what's happening. But those numbers, like I said, went all the way down to 700, and now they're going back up again.
Has to be a little bit of a deep breath, though. I know the Venezuelans offered a challenge that local leaders had never seen before.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I said it has to be kind of some relief because Venezuelans, they offered a challenge that local leaders had never seen before with being unsponsored. A little bit of some relief now.
Oh, absolutely, but it's only temporary. Now, people need to understand that the approach that we've taken, Congresswoman Escobar, the mayor, myself, and immigration agencies, this is a temporary relief. It's not going to be until we solve the problem of reform, immigration reform, being able to get people to work or the migrants to work. All of that are some of the real things that can change. Everything else, it's almost hitting a symptom instead of the root cause. And as we continue to focus on symptoms, we'll continue to have it's either one or the other. For example, our decompression was sending flights out, but at the moment that they get more people, they won't have the space and our flights will be reduced, and then that's where we have an impact. So all along the border, we're working with each other. We have Gloria Chavez, Chief Chavez, cooperating and telling us, hey, we have space, you can fly them into our area. But if the flow continues, then we have an issue. We also remember that in December, there seems to be, more difficulty because our flights go up because of our own tourism and people leaving to different vacations and so forth for the holidays and using the buses. And so that takes away that resource away from us. So December, late November, early December, it's really another challenge that we have to figure out. So trying to be proactive of everything that we do. I think we've learned a lot. We know how to do this, but we cannot get caught flat-footed like we did when we had 750 plus on the border.
You're watching ABC-7 Extra. Still ahead, a look at the high number of encounters at the southern border and how they compare with previous surges in El Paso. Stay with us.
Get Gabe Vasquez is too extreme. He supports defunding police.
We need to get rid of them.
It's not just getting rid of police. Vasquez would kill New Mexico's oil jobs.
Shut it all down. Let's just get rid of it immediately. And I agree with that.
Vasquez would kill our jobs. So when Vasquez says,
we need to get rid of them,
he's talking about our jobs and our cops. Gabe Vasquez is reckless and dangerous. The NRCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
We have a choice, and it's simple. Do we want a country where extremist politicians strip away women's rights, put our democracy in danger, and serve their party leaders before us? If the answer is no, and you want to protect our freedoms, put people, not parties, first, and build an economy for everyone, then join me. Let's show them who New Mexico is. I'm Gabe Vasquez, and I approve this message.
Save on Santa Fe today at Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso. We are overloaded with Santa Fe's in stock right now. You heard right. A huge inventory is available today on our lot. All new 2023 Santa Fe's for $289 a month or 0 down or 1.9% APR for well-qualified buyers. Save on Santa Fe. Backed with a 10-year warranty, 10-inch touchscreen, Apple CarPlay, wireless device charging, and so much more. All for $289 a month or 1.9% APR. Save on Santa Fe today at Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso.
Who really supports the police?
Not you, Gabe. Gabe Vasquez is lying about his views to get elected. Listen to Gabe Vasquez when he's not running for office.
It's not just about defunding the police, it's about defunding a system.
Caught lying about the police.
We don't need those positions anymore, then we need to get rid of them.
Lying politician Gabe Vasquez wants to defund the police. We can't trust him to keep us safe. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back. We want to give you some perspective on El Paso's migrant surges throughout the year. This is not the first time our region has seen thousands of migrants. ABC-7's Jason McNabb shows you what the El Paso sector has experienced in the past 3 decades.
With border crossings being at an all-time high in the El Paso sector, let's take a look at the history of these crossings from the past 30 years. In 1993, Operation Hold the Line was put into place in El Paso, which was a human and vehicle wall created by Border Patrol to stop migrant inflow. We then moved to 1994, which saw the Clinton administration execute Operation Gatekeeper, which beefed up Border Patrol and added the first fence in El Paso. Then 9/11 happened, which led to the creation of the Homeland Security by the Bush administration in 2003. This was followed up by the Secure Fence Act in 2006, which added many miles of fencing and vehicle barriers and heightened existing fences. Crossings began dropping dramatically by this point, and in 2008, the new border fence was fortified in El Paso as part of the Bush administration's Secure Fence Act. Numbers remained low until late 2018, when El Paso experienced a large migrant surge from Central America, causing numbers to skyrocket. Numbers dropped in 2020 due to the pandemic, and that's also when Title 42 was implemented. However, in 2022, numbers rose back up, and the border is now facing another surge of migrants, with a large portion of them being from the Venezuela area. The El Paso sector has seen a record number of border crossings this year, the number being over 307,000 people. Jason McNabb, ABC-7.
And Border Patrol just released its full migrant encounter numbers for fiscal year 2022, which ended in September. In total, along the entire southwestern border, Border Patrol encountered more than 2.2 million migrants. That is a 33% increase from the previous year. In the El Paso sector alone, Border Patrol encountered more than 307,000 migrants, as Jason said. That's a 58% increase from last year, and it's the 3rd highest increase along the border, behind Yuma and Del Rio. A majority of people coming to the border are single adults. That was more than 1.5 million encounters. Family units come next with just under 500,000 encounters, and unaccompanied children were encountered almost 150,000 times. We are still joined by County Judge Ricardo Samaniego. And Judge, I want to ask you, you've seen migrant surges in the past. Of course, we saw late 2018 and 2019 a surge from Central America. I'm curious, how does this most recent surge from Venezuela compare in your eyes?
Well, you know, I was actually Democratic elect in 2018, and I got involved in it. And then in 2019, I started my 4-year term, and that was a huge surge there that we had to figure out how to handle. I think the difference is there's more and more desperation because of the economy. We had the pandemic that hit, so a lot of the economies throughout the world are now wanting to come to this area. We've had the hurricanes, so there's a lot of tremendous amount of need for people to leave their countries, and that's what's going to be the biggest challenge. If we don't come up quickly with the right reforms, then you've got more and more attraction to the United States, and we're doing well. I mean, especially El Paso, our economy, and so forth. But there's a lot of challenges throughout the world, and from what's happening in Ukraine, and what's going to happen there. Is there going to be an attraction to come to the United States? So I think the big difference is that it seemed like an anomaly in 2018, 2019 of certain things happening, but now I think you have a worldwide situation and challenges that really put a lot of pressure on our borders because of that attraction, that draw of going to somewhere it's safe. Now, people also believe that an asylum is based on poverty, and it isn't. Poverty is not criteria for an asylum. It has to be a threat. It has to be a lot of different criterias. But being poor or being challenged because of the economy is not. But that's the misunderstanding. A majority of the ones that have come through seeking asylums that go through the hearing, very few are going to stay. But between that time, you also have individuals that are staying in our country that might not end up here to begin with because it's not a legitimate claim for asylum.
You're watching ABC-7 Extra. Still ahead, what do we focus on now with the migrant situation?
Your smile says a lot about you. At the office of Dr. Daniel Castro, we pride ourselves with creating your perfect smile safely and comfortably. Whether you need dental implants, veneers, crowns, or other phases of dental care, Dr. Castro and team can provide you with the best care. When the masks come off, we hope to bring back all the best smiles to our community.
He tried to make it disappear, but Mark Ronchetti got caught trying to erase his long record opposing abortion rights. Ronchetti wrote he opposes abortion at all stages and praised the Supreme Court for letting politicians outlaw abortion with no exceptions for rape or incest. So extreme, it's no surprise he tried to cover up his record. We can't trust Ronchetti as governor. Paid for by A Stronger New Mexico.
Wow, would you look at that?
It's beautiful.
He even remembered the napkins.
Wow. That's our boy.
So proud.
There's always a deal worth loving at McDonald's. Right now, buy a sausage McMuffin with egg or a sausage biscuit with egg and get another one for just $1. Only at McDonald's.
As a single mom with young kids, I think a lot about their future. And when they grow up, I want them to be able to stay here in Texas. That's why I trust Governor Abbott to protect their future. Greg Abbott is a family man who's honest with a caring heart. He's overcome adversity and never, ever given up. And he wants every child to reach their God-given potential right here in Texas. How do I know so much about Governor Abbott? He's my uncle. I call him Theo Greg.
Welcome back. I'm still joined by the county judge. And Judge, I know we say you've told us the county-run site, the processing site, it's still open, it's still operational. You have that, I believe it's a 2-year lease for that building, correct?
2-year lease, but we have flexibility where, things, the numbers go down. I mean, that'd be optimistic. And also the same thing with the contractor, that we're able to make that adjustment. But I don't see that, I'm not that optimistic that things would change for us to, close or shut down any of the places that we have at this time.
Really, in the next 2 years?
Yeah, I would say.
No.
Everybody's waiting for November as maybe a key, depending on legislation and who's in office and who's been, who's going to be elected. These things can change. But like I said, we're very, we're understanding that we made a contract with both a lease and the contractor, that we have that kind of flexibility depending on the numbers.
Now the contractor, the Providencia Group, it's a $6.8 million contract. You're paying roughly $11,000 a month for the lease.
That's correct.
Are you still waiting for any reimbursements from FEMA?
No, we were very fortunate that we went to them. We said we would not be able to proceed unless we had the money in hand. We got $6.3 million, and the only thing that is we're talking about and that we've discussed with Congresswoman Escobar is that, you know, it doesn't look that well for FEMA. I mean, we don't know if FEMA is going to be able to continue that. So we're paid up till December, but we don't have a really clear understanding as to whether FEMA will continue. You're safer if you're in the food and shelter. I mean, that's a little safer than transportation or some of the collateral things that you have that you need from FEMA. But the food and shelter is safe, but it's not guaranteed. And I think the community needs to know it's not a guarantee that in January that you're going to have that kind of funding. It's probably going to be limited and hopefully not too much. And then we have to make the adjustments at that point because, you know, as a community, we're not able to handle anything beyond our budget and what we're trying to accomplish. You know, without FEMA, we would have to make, you know, huge adjustments. We'd have to go to the general fund, and that's not something that we're very inclined to do.
You mentioned we're waiting until November to see, you know, how these elections play out. Do you have any hope that what has transpired here in the past few months, it's been on a national stage, the whole entire country was looking south toward El Paso even. Do you think what people saw here will maybe ignite something in the United States Congress for immigration reform?
I think we all know that, you know, it's funny how things happen, but when we were sending to New York, New York, Atlanta, and all of these places didn't realize the impact that it had. And we always said, hey, this is not a community impact. This is an impact to the entire nation. But we never got that traction because they didn't feel it. So, you know, like New York was, come on, send them over here. And when we started sending them, they realized how difficult it was. Same thing for Chicago. So I think that in a sense, it was sort of a blessing in disguise that they now know the impact that we have at the border. Nobody had felt it other than the border because people went on their way and they got sponsored and nobody really understood that. The minute it hit their community, now they know what we're going through. I think there's going to be a lot more sensitivity to fixing some of the problems and looking at reform because now these communities, large communities, Texas had already felt it a little bit, but New York and, you know, these areas like Miami that are having a difficult time with the migrants now are going to be much more sympathetic to what we need to do here at the border.
Thank you for joining us for ABC-7 Extra. I'm Dylan McKim. Have a great week.
Thank you for watching ABC-7.